go.
Vietnam.
Timer's going.
You gotta click it. There you go. Vietnam, or the Cold War was still going on between U.S. and Russia, but they weren't going to risk a full-on confrontation between the two countries. So they used Vietnam as a smaller way to confront each other without fully confronting each other. Geneva, the Geneva Accords of 1954 were when all the world powers met in Geneva, Switzerland. They decided to discuss Vietnam and the problems they were having. They wanted to split the country on the 17th parallel and hold an election for new leaders to avoid corruption. Then we got involved because Kennedy presidency was around eliminating communism, and Vietnam was following communism, so they saw an opportunity to start pushing back there. August 2nd, they began Operation early 1960s.
The Tet Offensive was the biggest military complaint. Was started on January 30th, 1968. It was many surprise attacks against military and commanders. Nearly 150 Marines were killed, along with 400 South Vietnamese. On the communist side, there were 5,000 people killed by American air and artillery strikes. Battle of Hue. It was one of the biggest major battles fought at the city. The battle took place in an urban landscape. It started with artillery fire, then ground fire. They didn't think the battle was a threat, but they were wrong and realized they needed troops. The Battle of Saigon. They were losing encounters with Americans. The South sent their people into the jungle to keep them from harm. The military sent an ambush from the north. This retreat of people caused many to die. The United States was all remaining troops retreated, even though many escaped. The death toll was as high as 100,000 people. To this day, Saigon is,
Women in Vietnam, there wasn't very much data to prove that there was women fighting in the Vietnam War. They mostly served as nurses, and at this time there wasn't much use for them because our medical technology was not that far advanced. The role they played was mostly nurse. There was a few that fought, and there was very little data to prove that. There was approximately 11,000 military women were stationed in Vietnam during the conflict. Nearly all of them were volunteers, and 90% of them served as military nurses. Why we needed them? Even though our medical technology was not that far in advance, we still used many medicines and other forms to advance our, in addition to
weapons and technology during the war. Nearly all United States Allied forces were armed with U.S. weapons, some of which were substitute standard weapons from World War II. By 1969, the Army had identified 40 rifle types. Communist forces primarily were armed with Chinese and Soviet weaponry. The Soviet AK-47 was widely known as the best assault rifle. The American M16 rifle was lighter and considered more accurate than the AK-47, but it was prone to jamming. The M16 would often fail to extract the cartridge case that would cause the gun to jam. The Patton tank saw a lot of action during the Vietnam War, and over 600 were deployed with U.S. forces. They played an important role in infantry support, though there were very few tank-to-tank battles. The U.S. air had superiority, though many aircraft were lost to surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft artillery. The Vietnam War was the first conflict that saw wide-scale tactical deployment of helicopters. The Iroquois was used extensively in counter-guerrilla operations and a troop carrier in the gunship. Later, the Huey was outfitted with M60 machine guns.
Vietnamization, it was for the U.S. to withdraw to get involved with the war. Vietnamization was a policy of Richard Nixon administered during the Vietnam War to end U.S. involvement in the war. On January 28th of 1969, the name Vietnamization was incidentally when a General Andrew Goodpaster just go to the next slide.
Oh, here it is there.
And Vietnamese put on the emphasis right next to Nixon. Use the term issued by Larry. Vietnam fit into the Georgia defense policy of the South Vietnamese numbers.